What if the fall of the Roman Empire, or the mysterious disappearance of the Mayans, what if it wasn't really about war, or famine, or disease? What if it was about something way more fundamental, something we deal with every single day? Let's dive into one of history's biggest and most urgent mysteries.
It's a question that just haunts you, right? You have these incredible societies, the Mayans, the Romans, these huge Bronze Age empires. They build things that should last forever, and then, poof, they're gone. Why? What is the one crucial lesson that they all somehow missed?
And look, this isn't just some academic question for the history books. Figuring out why complex societies fall apart has probably never been more relevant than it is for us right now.
Now, whenever historians try to crack these cold cases, they usually bring in a familiar lineup of culprits.
You know the ones I'm talking about. You've got environmental damage, you've got bad leaders, war, massive inequality, and hey, they're all true. They are absolutely pieces of the puzzle. But what if they're not the root cause? What if they're all just symptoms of a much deeper, more basic failure?
And that's where this really fascinating new way of looking at the whole problem comes in. It's a theory that kind of reframes everything.
The core idea is actually stunningly simple. It says that the survival of a civilization doesn't really depend on its resources or its tech. It depends on what that society as a whole chooses to pay attention to. It's all about focus. This is the big idea behind what's called attention-driven stability theory.
So here's how it works. It's basically a stability loop. And the best way to think about it is like driving a car. To stay on the road, you have to pay attention to the critical signals, right? The road ahead, how fast you're going, your fuel gauge. You use that information to see what's actually happening, and then you adapt. Healthy societies do the exact same thing. They pay attention to the right signals, they understand what they mean, and they adjust to stay stable.
But what happens when that loop breaks? When a society misallocates its attention, when it starts focusing on the wrong things, it stops seeing reality. It's like you're driving down the highway, but you're staring at the radio instead of the road. You're going to miss the warning signs, and that is the straightest path to collapse.
Okay, so that's the theory. But does it actually hold up in the real world? Well, let's use it as a new lens to look at some of history's most famous collapses.
Let's start with the Mayans. Their collective attention was completely captured. They were obsessed with building these magnificent temples with intricate rituals and with who was in power. But while they were all looking up at their incredible monuments, they weren't looking down at the very ground beneath their feet. They totally missed the critical signals, like their soil giving out and the stress on their farms. All their attention was on prestige, not on the environmental foundation their entire world was built on.
It's kind of crazy, but you see the exact same pattern on Easter Island. Their attention was completely hijacked by this massive competition between clans to build those giant Moai statues. It was all about status, who could build the biggest and the best. But that obsession led them to ignore the catastrophic deforestation and soil erosion that was happening all around them. I mean, they literally consumed their entire island to build status symbols.
And this shows that the same dynamic can happen on an even bigger scale. We're talking about the late Bronze Age, where this whole network of powerful, interconnected empires all collapsed at pretty much the same time. Their leaders, their elites, they were all focused on prestige politics, building huge monuments, and managing their diplomatic networks. They were playing the Game of Thrones, but they completely missed the slow, creeping threats of drought, mass migrations, and the fact that their supply chains were becoming incredibly fragile.
Okay, so this pattern of misplacing attention, it's not just some fascinating thing from ancient history. According to this theory, it's the single biggest challenge we're facing today.
And that's not me being dramatic. That is a direct quote. It's not from some old history book, it's from a recent climate science report. What scientists are telling us is that this exact historical pattern of ignoring critical environmental signals is playing out again, right now, but this time on a global scale.
So what are our modern attention traps? Well, the theory points to a few big ones. Our collective attention is captured by short-term rewards, right? Things like quarterly profits and the next election cycle. Our brains are just not wired to properly weigh slow-moving, abstract threats like climate change. And on top of all that, our focus is constantly being hijacked by the noise of misinformation and political polarization, which leads to this massive failure of global cooperation.
So if the core problem is a failure of our collective attention, what does that tell us about the solution?
And this, right here, is the crucial takeaway. We talk a lot about new technology, new policies, changing our values. And look, all of those things are absolutely necessary. But this theory argues that they're not enough. They're just tools. The fundamental target has to be fixing our collective focus itself.
The real work, the hard work, is about realigning our global attention with reality and getting us to narrow our focus onto the actual risks that threaten our stability.
It all boils down to one final, really powerful question we have to ask ourselves. The Mayans were focused on their temples. The people of Easter Island were focused on their statues. In our modern world, with its endless stream of noise and distraction, what truly has our attention?